match. This next game for Hikaru means everything. He promised he would be aggressive. He needs to back it up now, needs to show it, and he still has chances. It is a long match, but it all starts here.
It's absolutely imperative that he does that. You know, against Magnus, if you have to beat a guy like that, you need to pull him into those kind of positions. You know, Mikhail Karl's famous forest of complication, 2 + 2 = 5, the path out wide enough for one player. That is where you need Magnus Carlsen, where there's opportunities for both players to go wrong. You go into a strategic positional endgame grind, you're not surviving that against Magnus. No. So how will Hikaru make this aggressive? It starts with, I was going to say a Queen's Gambit decline, but we do see some trades in the center.
Yeah, he started with the Queen's Gambit decline, then he kind of accepted the Gambit as soon as the Catalan appeared with the white bishop standing on g2. Now Magnus trying to clear the center. You don't want queens off the board. If you're Hikaru Nakamura, he's learned that lesson in the previous game. So will he be finding another solution? The white knight can develop to f3 as well. They still will transpose, most likely, to some well-known opening theory. But most importantly for Magnus, he forces Hikaru to pause first.
Yeah, already having a little bit of a think, going down to just over 9 minutes. This is move 5 here. So interesting that Hikaru spending a bit of time to decide what might serve him the best in this game. He wants to strike back immediately. He wants to be aggressive. We heard that from him in the interview. He's not interested in hanging back, biding his time. He wants to be as aggressive as possible. Queen a4 on the board.
And the bishop blocks the check and plants itself on a really nice square, challenging that Catalan bishop. More trades off the board. Happier will be Magnus Carlsen. But it does come with a pawn sacrifice, a temporary one.
Temporary one. Will we see that sacrifice accepted? We do. A trade of bishops. Hikaru goes up a pawn, but this is only very much temporary. Black can win the pawn back in multiple ways. And let's see. One of the ideas here, a check, first of all, hitting the white king. If this is blocked by the white knight or the white bishop, then the black queen can recapture on c5. I think this is the most pain-free variation, and very tough to imagine anything going wrong for black here. It's symmetry. We saw what happened in a symmetrical endgame in the previous encounter. Very, very surprising that Hikaru has allowed this. Magnus actually goes for a different path, but same idea, to get the queens off, to win back the c5 pawn.
I have to say, this hasn't been an opening success for Hikaru in any imaginable way. Yes, you win that pawn for just about one move. Magnus playing super actively. You take that queen, the knight would have jumped forward, threatening some deadly forks on c2. c5 pawn about to be lost, which can now anyway be picked up. But Hikaru setting up an idea, attacks b7, and Magnus continues to chase for that endgame.
So consistent, so effective from Magnus Carlsen. We know his match strategy. He wants the queens off as soon as possible, as easily as possible in every game. He won game 1 with the queens off, and Hikaru here struggling to keep those important pieces on. No aggressive chess without those queens, unfortunately, especially with these symmetrical pawn structures. There we go. At least this last move from Hikaru showing his intentions.
He wants a fight. He wants a middle game. He's saying, maybe there will be an end game, but you'll have to sweat for it a little bit. And that's a good sign. But I'm not liking the position as it exists. For white, it just feels like you're a little behind in development right now. Black's rooks already connected. The bishop knights playing beautifully. Meanwhile, for Hikaru, bishop on c1. Rook stuck at the corners of the board.
Right.
One move away from castling, a couple of moves away from completing development. This has to be advantage black.
When you castle, you don't actually have the fianchetto bishop anymore either, so you've just played g3, and you're struggling for development. At the same time, we've got a3 and the tempo 1 against the black queen, so Hikaru's going to be able to buy himself some time to complete some much-needed development. Yeah. Where do his pieces need to live?
It's difficult, especially for the dark square bishop here, Tanya.
Absolutely, and I think he's trying to get that dark square bishop to fianchetto itself on b2, get that b pawn rolling up the board with tempo. It is early days in this match, I know, but I think this has the makings of a mini match. If Magnus, with the advantage, the piece flow that he has, he's able to create something. I mean, a 2-point deficit is impossible to come back from.
Yeah, if Magnus wins this one, Hikaru, his head will be down. I'm not sure he'll believe anymore. I think a draw in this one for Hikaru is not the worst result. At least then he'll get on the scoreboard, still plenty of action ahead. Small advantage, very small advantage now according to the eval bar for black, but at least white's king can castle. As we said earlier, it's just the Catalan opening, a very healthy opening, but without white's beautiful bishop on g2 and without black's problem piece, the problem child of the Catalan opening, the bishop on c8. The fact that Magnus has traded just like the previous game, the fact he's conquered the open d-file, bodes well for him. Still level on the eval bar, but Hikaru needs to do some damage limitation.
Both players know it as well, of course. A Catalan, but a better version as far as Magnus is concerned. They will have to put that out of their heads. Hikaru will have to say, well, okay, that's great, but what's the objective best move here? Where should my pieces be considering? I don't have that light squared bishop anymore. What different combinations of pieces, what different possible attacking setups can I employ now that the composition of pieces on the board is a little different to what I'm used to?
This is a dream Catalan for black. You know, you've gotten rid of that most important fianchettoed bishop on g2. Your own problem child gone. The c7 pawn, which is usually one of the big problems for black, a weakness to target, that doesn't exist on the board. And I think to answer your question, Hikaru does want to fianchetto his own bishop on b2. He first had to defend his knight from the attack by the black rook.
Right.
So bishop is headed to that longest diagonal.
This is the best position he's had since move 5. Hikaru Nakamura, the white knight, at least finding a good square. The black rooks look decent, at least they will do. The other one likely to land on c8, but the white bishop, that was the problem piece. It is developing. So very much a level position now. Hikaru, definitely the last 5-6 moves have gone in his favor. I'm going to say he's been able to not allow Magnus to land any concrete punches. And okay, still plenty of game ahead. If the queens come off though, I'm expecting Magnus to try and trade queens in the near future. Still should be safe enough for black.
And I want to point out a little bit of a psychological warfare. You know, we've set the stage for what's at stake for these two players, that grand final spot to fight against Alireza. But for Hikaru, it feels like in the recent past, there has been a mental block playing Magnus. Just simply because the results, the way they've gone. You know, Magnus coming on top pretty much in every single final of theirs. And that's very tough to fight when you've got those ghosts to deal with. Not only are you playing a beast across you, you know, you're playing one of the greatest players of all time, but you also have these this psychological battle with yourself that how am I going to win? Because I haven't won in a long time against this guy.
And you do have a little bit of weight of expectation when it comes to a format like this one, because Hikaru Nakamura, a speed chess specialist, arguably the player everybody wants to beat, Magnus included. Magnus sees Hikaru as his nearest competition here, and we're in a format where we don't have the luxury of increment. It's 10-0, it's cutthroat. Hikaru thrives in such environments, so his pressure to beat Magnus under those circumstances can only be higher than normal.
Yeah, definitely. And there we see Hikaru, according to the eval bar, taking the advantage for the first time. I'm really shocked that Magnus allowed this white knight to jump. It's tying down the black rook now to a pawn. That black b pawn can never really move for want of allowing the white knight into a beautiful square on c6. Maybe it's not nothing too special here, but it does feel like a step in the right direction for Hikaru.
The last few moves by Magnus have been incredibly cagey, you know, falling back with the bishop where potentially he had a more active square, and now going into this slightly defensive setup with his rook as well. That knight on d5 looks beautiful, but at any moment that Hikaru chooses, it can be kicked back from the board. Hikaru also has the plan of just improving the position of his king. Meanwhile, for Magnus, is he going to do the same? Get his king up. How does he make progress? Hikaru's chasing that pawn, forcing the move b6, which would allow the knight to jump in.
Fair play to Hikaru. He's outplayed Magnus completely in the last half dozen moves. Magnus with a little bit of a shake of the head. It will be forced. There is too much pressure on the b7 square. And just to show if the pawn does push, very likely to be Magnus's move, then the white knight is in. And we'll see it now on a light square that cannot be challenged. It's going to be backed up by a white pawn as well. That is going to be a real nuisance for black to deal with.
Hikaru fighting back here. He's also now ahead on the clock. Not by much. It's about 20 seconds, so we don't read too much into that just yet, but he's on the good side of level, that is for sure. He's got the initiative. Magnus is responding to the agenda set by Hikaru as opposed to the other way around now. So there's a bit of a momentum shift in this game, and as we know from the Esports World Cup so far, momentum so often means so much.
And it's reflected in the graph you see at the bottom of your screens. The graph has been up and down. We saw some black dips, but it's going up in white's favor. And can Magnus stem that tide? Can he break the momentum? Not easy. The white rook just wants to slide into the corner now, into the a8 square, pick off a pawn.
That's a big threat, and you know, momentum really is everything, especially given this time control as well, the confidence. We were talking about the mental block. If Hikaru is able to strike, you know, in a position that would be considered Magnus's strength and endgame, that breaks that immediately.
Absolutely.
You know, you're right back into the fight. So this is a big key moment for the entire match to play out. A draw would not be a disastrous result, but a win would be everything that Hikaru needs, not just for now, from a long-term perspective in this epic rivalry.
And it's going to give Carlsen pause as well if Hikaru comes back and dominates the rest of this game, for example. So Carlsen very much on a mission now to not salvage anything, because at the end of the day, this is not won or lost, but the momentum is shifting out of his favor.
And Magnus is reacting. You can tell he hates it. If Magnus was playing from the white side of the board, we'd be saying this is over for black.
Yeah, exactly. That is fair. I mean, Magnus is very good at finding small advantages and going, don't worry, this is just a big advantage that I haven't watered enough yet. Just give it a couple of dozen moves, and this is basically a one game. There is no player on earth that I think we can be more certain making that statement about in a game than Magnus Carlsen. But right now, the boot's on the other foot.
Yeah, and do you know who the second best player at grinding out these slightly better endgames is these days?
David Howell.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish.
He wrote a book on it.
Grind like a grandmaster.
No. I would say Hikaru is the world number 2 at grinding out these small advantages. He's kind of learned from Magnus. I mean, we've all been watching Magnus's games for so long. He's
3.5 minute gap.
Ooh. But yeah, he's learned from Magnus. He's applied the Magnus pressure onto the world number 1 himself, and question mark given to this last move. The white rook can still slide into the corner. The white pawn can kick the black knight out of the middle of the board. So many tempting, forceful moves here.
You can just win a pawn by doing that, right? That knight is a defender of the b6 pawn. Hikaru is about to go up a pawn in this position if he goes e4.
Wow, it's that simple. I didn't expect it. But you're right, Tanya. Pawn to e4. Maybe we can show this on the board while Hikaru thinks he can win a pawn by force, and decisive advantage potentially. He actually plays this move, and now go pawn hunting. Rook takes b6, and we can show the plan over the next few moves. The white king will try to centralize. The white knight might even come up to the b8 square and pick off the remaining black pawn on a6. This one looks like a matter of time. We've seen it a few times from Alireza Firouzja. 2 versus 1 on the queen side. Pawns marching forward. This is winning now for Hikaru.
He does it. He goes for it. Hikaru with an extra pawn, with extra time, 1.5 minutes on the clock to boot. But he has to finish this job off. He cannot let Magnus off the hook in this one. Yeah. This is the biggest opportunity, and you get them far and few against the world number 1.
If he doesn't convert this, Hikaru, it's going to be similar, I feel, to the Firouzja against Arjun match, where a big missed opportunity was the only opportunity for Arjun.
Right. And that was that proved to be, if we're being honest, that was the pivotal moment in that match, right? It was all one-sided as far as the scoreline was concerned, but the story leading to that scoreline, so much of that hinged on that very, very important moment that we got to bear witness to. So potential similar turning point here as Hikaru tries to convert this position against Magnus.
Hikaru has to let Magnus not get into his head right now. He has to be the monster that he is himself,
yes.
The world-class player that he is himself, the world number 2 that he's been for so long, the absolute best in the world for so many decades, and believe that he can do this against Magnus, because this is when the nerves set in, right? You're going under the 4-minute mark. This has to be winning, but it's not over until it's over against Magnus. He will try to make this as tricky as possible. You have to beat him, not in 3 phases of the game, not only in opening, middle game, and end game, but every move of the game.
Here we go. The black king retreats all the way home to try and kick away the white rook. The black bishop now also steps out of the attack. The rook does look slightly clumsy, white's rook. It's very active, but can't move to too many better posts. The white king, for now, can't enter the action, can't enter the battle. You need that second front. You need a second way in.
Where are we going to find that? Maybe rerouting the knight to d5 or f5, I suppose? But all of these things, it's tricky to step back and say, I need to do something that takes 2 or 3 moves when you're in your opponent's face and it feels like every move needs to be some sort of counterpunch. I don't see a 1-move counterpunch on the board right now for Hikaru Nakamura.
I don't think that exists, and maybe it's not necessary. He needs to maneuver around, improve the position of his pieces like you mentioned, but also keep advancing those pawns at the right time. And Hikaru here goes for a very direct line, but was that a bit rushed by him?
I really don't like that decision from Hikaru Nakamura. He's rushing things, definitely. Look at this, the white pawn that he advanced. He suddenly made it weak. The white rook, unstable. The white pawn on b5, dropping. There are some tactics in the air here, and it does all on Hikaru Nakamura's shoulders to find something before it's too late, before the advantage fizzles out.
Well, there we go. Well, knight b6 check was played. I thought maybe we would get a bishop taking on e5 there, but he's obviously seen that and chosen something else instead.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk about this, because if the bishop is captured, knight takes pawn would have been a fork, hitting the king, hitting the rook. He ultimately didn't play this move because if the bishop had taken the pawn, the black knight would have taken on b5, and half of white's army is hanging. Maybe rook to b6 here would have maintained the advantage, but Hikaru has gone a different way instead. It's not the e-pawn that drops off, but here if we go back to the game, Magnus has a bishop hanging loose on d6 almost. The black rook on d3 protects it, but still given a question mark. How can Hikaru maintain his edge?
But now Hikaru is the one who's under 2 minutes as well, right? Magnus up on the clock there. So Hikaru feeling the pressure. Is he going to try? And you know, that expression by Hikaru, we've seen it before against Wei Yi as well. When he starts, when the panic sets in, when the realization that the opponent has counterplay comes in, Hikaru, he needs to keep his nerves. King d7.
Magnus has blundered bishop to b4 now.
Oh, wow.
Moving the bishop across would have been a winning move. The black knight would have been under too much pressure. He misses it, Hikaru. We've repeated the position. He can go back and find it again. Will Magnus blunder? It's a second opportunity. He needs to find this move, bishop to b4, and then he will be taking the black knight and winning this endgame. But Hikaru's panicking.
Cannot repeat.
1 minute.
He goes for a draw or he goes to win.
He needs to play this move, bishop to b4. He needs to find it to strike back in this match.
But look at his face. It's almost like he doesn't see it. I think he's about to repeat. Hikaru, don't do it. Don't do it. This is your chance.
Play on.
One more win. A one more win for Hikaru Nakamura.
Black can save a bishop by taking this pawn. There will be a trade. The white rook, though, is going to go grab everything. That will be a winning endgame, an easy win for Hikaru. He's running out of time, though.
And the more he thinks, the more I feel he's going to repeat. And that's it. The game ends in a draw instead of the winning move. Hikaru bails out. Unbelievable.
A draw by repetition in a position where a winning move was available. Dramatic scenes here at the end of this game. And that means, as far as the match score is concerned, it's 1.5 advantage Carlsen. Magnus has got to be thinking he was left off the hook there.